go. All right, so we're back and we want to welcome our special guests today. I have Dr. Braque Talley and Dr. Brittney Talley. So welcome to the podcast of the Vessel, you guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. So these two, Braque, we were classmates, childhood friends, known each other pretty much our whole lives. And so he welcomed Brittney into his life. I don't know when y'all first met, but y'all been married, what, a year now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's awesome. So today we are here to talk about marriage. And so as I was preparing for this episode, I was just thinking about where I am in my life and kind of where my friends are. A lot of my friends are married, recently married or been married for a couple years. And so, of course, that's what's on my mind at this point in my life. And it's been conversations where I've talked to some of my single friends and then some of my married friends to just kind of talk about their experiences, what led them to marriage, the importance of getting married, and then kind of what role their relationship with God and their faith has either evolved or started or has diminished. So I'm not, assuming anything because everybody's journey is different. And so I'm always interested in what that looks like when you merge two lives together. So we got a few questions we're going to, tap into and just kind of see where we are in terms of your journey. So the first question I was going to pose to you both is, how did you know that he or she was the one? So Braque, you want to start?
Okay.
You got a head start on the questions.
I was hoping you'd call on Brittney first so I know how to respond. But I think I don't think I could point to one single thing. I don't think it's monolithic. I think that there was a series of events that happened throughout the courtship of our relationship that made me say, okay, she's the one for me. But I had to point to one event that stands out. I received a job offer a few years ago that required me to move to Illinois. And Brittney and I were not cohabitating at the time. And she said, hey, well, I asked her, I said, hey, I would like for you to move with me. And at this time, Brittney was, she was practicing physical therapy at Memphis. She was doing her thing. She had purchased a home. She has a child who's in school. She was like, okay, let's go. And, I was like, man, if she believed this much in me, I need to, ain't nothing else for me to do but to marry.
No, the writing's on the wall at that point. She's going to pack up her life.
Yeah, so we went to Illinois and it always seemed surreal until it was done. So we went to Illinois, secured housing, started moving items. And, the funny thing was, I think even though we were both excited about it, we still were like, is this really the right move? And maybe the week before we were supposed to finalize our moves, we had put our resignation letters in at our jobs. She had withdrawn Bryden, our daughter, from school. And I was like, hey, I don't want to go anymore.
Wow.
She was like, okay, if you think this was best for our family, and I gave my reasons. And what happened is my job that I had in Mississippi matched the offer, and changed my title to vice president. And so we talked about it, and she was like, okay, well, we won't go. So we had to go back to Illinois and move our things back, get out of our lease on our house, and all of those things. And she was with me throughout. She didn't once. She didn't publicly question my leadership and where we were going, but so I said, man, I need to go ahead and marry her. This is a life partner.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Oh, beautiful. Brittney?
Yeah, well, that was a great story, Braque. It was a very trying time for us, and so many things were rearranged. But, like he said, I felt like he was the one at that point. So, I just kind of went with it. But I think, for me, I think I realized that Braque was the one a whole lot earlier than that. Like Braque said, when we found each other, I was single. I was a single mother. I think at the time, my daughter, Bryden, she may have been, I don't know, seven or eight. So I had been single for a while. I was used to, just kind of doing my own thing, being independent, working, grinding, because it was just me and my daughter. And, I always said, whenever I find someone, I want that person to be, accepting of my daughter as well. And so, in the midst of me like working, I was working PRN on the weekends. And sometimes I would have to take my daughter with me. And so Braque and I, we were, chatting at the time. And there was one particular weekend where I was, working overtime. I had my daughter with me. And the administrator of the facility that I was working in, she said, hey, you can't have your daughter here. You're going to have to clock out and take her home. And so I texted Braque. I told him the situation, and he was like, don't clock out. I'm on my way. I'm going to, take care of it. And he picked my daughter up.
Okay, swish. Okay.
My daughter
Score!
He got her something to eat. They had ice cream. And I just thought, this is the person for me. I need someone in my life that's gonna, accept me for me as well as my daughter, because we are a package.
Absolutely.
So that was the point when I realized, okay, well, this guy might be onto something, he may be my forever sweetheart.
Look at y'all. Okay. That's beautiful. I love it. I think that we need to talk more about that, about the process, because decisions that y'all had to make early on, that's huge, even before the full commitment. And so I think that's admirable of both of you, and really a testament to what God can do in your lives, both individually, because I think a lot of great things were going on with you guys as individuals. And that's another thing. It's about, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys were, as individuals, whole people. Like you had your, education and career and family for you, Brittney, with a child going, and you're doing your thing, and you're fine alone. But when you guys came together, man, that's awesome. So great story. So we're going to move on to the next question is, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but who is God to you individually, and then who is God to you as a unit, as a collective? And anyone can go first.
To me, God is everything. He has been, the guiding force in my life for a very long time. I grew up in the church. My mom was the, secretary in our church. My grandmother sang in the choir. My granddad was a deacon at the church. So not going to church was never an option. God was just like a staple in our family. And I was taught at an early age to lean and depend on him. And, anything is possible with him. And I think, over the past few years, I'll say this, my mom passed away in 2014. And I think, her passing has made me grow a whole lot closer to him, just because, I'm an only child. And so he was the, force that I had to lean and depend on after, my mom, my best friend, passed away. But, to me, individually, he's everything. I pray to him, and I think about, what he's done for my family. And, I'm just nothing without him. So he means everything to me.
Awesome. Braque?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think I've grown closer to God since I've gotten married. And I was one who, like Brittney said, and as you know, grew up in the church, going to Bible study, going, singing in the choir, doing all those little things. And I knew God, but I don't know if I really had a relationship with him. And I think that's where many folks get caught up in knowing somebody, then having an intimate relationship with them. And that's how I was. Sorry about my dog barking.
It's okay.
but that's where I was, because I think it was so, and I don't want this to sound crazy, but being a young professional, I felt like things came so easy materialistically. I had gotten my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, working on my doctorate degree, had become one of the youngest vice presidents in the country, being featured in magazines, all of these things, being recognized as, top 40 in Mississippi. All of these things were happening, and I felt like I was doing them on my own because I knew how hard I was working. But now that I've gotten married, I believe that the man has to be the protector and provider. So when I was, if things had fallen apart, I felt like I had enough wherewithal to gather myself and to be okay. But now that I'm married, I feel like I have to depend on God even more because I understand that my job is to protect and to provide, and I need some help with that. You know what I mean? I can't do it myself. And that's not to say I'm perfect, because I'm far from it, but to say I need God's help in order to try to ensure that those things, those responsibilities that he's blessed me with will be taken care of, will be handled. So I feel like I'm closer to God now that I'm married than I was before I got married. And I'm gonna tell you this real quickly. And one of our first dates, Brittney took me to a Jacqueline Carr concert. And was it Jacqueline Carr?
No, it was
Tasha Cobbs.
Tasha Cobbs. He
Tasha Cobbs.
didn't even know who Tasha Cobbs was.
Oh no, she's a legend. Oh, she's a staple.
Oh,
But see, Leanne, I didn't know. She thought I was a heathen or some kind of Tasha Cobbs comes. And then she took me to see Jonathan McReynolds.
Yeah, we went to see him.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, what are you trying to tell me? And look, Leanne, I'm taking her on concert to see. I'm taking her to the blues, to the club. And she's taking me to church. But we met somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one thing that I hear both of you say is you talk about your relationship and how, the relationship with God. I think that's the key piece. I talk about that often is, even for myself, I had to learn relationship, and it wasn't until my adult years that I really understood who God was to me and really who God was, period. Because, you get the introduction when you're young, most people do. And so like I did, I didn't necessarily grow up in a church. We found a church later on in my kind of preteen years. But once we did, I was in church every Sunday and all of that. But it wasn't until really after college that I kind of built a relationship and really understood who God was to me. So that's good to hear you guys say that even individually you had some sense of who God was, and then as you grew together, it became even more prevalent in your lives. So that's awesome. So we're gonna transition to talk a little bit more about church. That's been a hot topic for me. I found myself in conversations about church with a lot of people, and the perspectives are a wide range, from church every Sunday, whether it's virtual, whatever, we're in the pandemic, to no church at all, I don't need it. It's useless in my life. And so I'm interested to know, for you guys as a married couple, how important is church in your marriage? And when I say church, I'm meaning attending, and then also your membership with a church.
I think for us, church is extremely important. It's, during this pandemic, it's been very difficult, I guess staying connected with the church, just because we were so used to, going every Sunday, going to Bible study. And one of the important things for me, having a daughter, was for that, whatever church I attend, to have an excellent youth program, just so she can grow up, learning scriptures and quoting scriptures and just develop that relationship. It's so difficult, without us physically going to church, because that was what we did on Sundays. I think attending church is so important for a marriage and, for us as a family, just so we can, receive the word. And, for me, church is what got me ready for the week. I go to church, receive that word, and, get into the choir and the singing, and it just sets you for the week. And I'm kind of missing that now.
Yeah, I think I agree. I remember my grandparents and the old folks. I shouldn't just say my grandparents would call church the filling station, and you're going to get the gas that you need to carry you throughout the week on whatever journey that God may have you on. And I feel like I'm being depleted. My gas light is on here, but because it's crazy how things happen. We moved to Arkansas in October, and the pandemic took off, maybe in February. So we were still in that crucible of trying to find a church home. So we had gone to this church, gone to that church, and left a very good church back home. We went to Brown Baptist in South Haven, which is a large church, but it's a very good church, really good.
Flying preacher, right?
Oh yeah, the flying preacher. That's what I say.
My cousin go to that church too, so I'm familiar with Brown. Good church.
Yeah.
We loved it there.
Pastor Orr is a phenomenal teacher.
Yes, he is.
And he's a preacher, and he's someone who you feel good about following because you can see God through his life, and he always talks about giving and living the Bible. I'm gonna wrap it up with this. My grandmother used to say, "You can talk, you can't talk this life. You got to live this life." And I feel like that's what he does, and that's why we were so drawn to him. But we moved here in October to Little Rock, and for the first couple of weeks, we probably didn't go to church because we were trying to get our house together. And then we started finding a church home, going here, going there, and then the pandemic happened. So we really haven't had a church home, and we've tried going to church virtually, but it's just not the same for me. Yeah. I need that. I need to be able to sit there and feel the energy from other believers, feel the energy from the choir and others. And I think it really just became a date for us because it was understood that, hey, on Sundays we're getting up going to church, and afterwards we're going out to eat. And that was our weekly ritual. Yeah.
Nice. I agree with both of you. I have been struggling since the pandemic, about church and being, face to face with church. I see lots of value in attending church and church membership. For me, I was, involved with the youth council, doing things with our youth at church and that kind of thing. And so worship with other believers was important to me. Now I realize that, the church is more than the four walls. I know that, we are the church is in our hearts. And so, but still, I still struggle with not being able to go. But now, honestly, through the pandemic, I feel like I've grown closer to him, even at home, without the service. But at the same time, it made me do some thinking about, what is my value to the church house, like to the actual physical building. Mm-hmm. And so I had to really do some self-reflection on that. But I think my conclusion was that I miss it. And I do miss it. Have I gone on without it? Absolutely. God is still there with me. But I definitely do miss the face-to-face, church on Sundays. So great conversation. Okay, so on the next question, we kind of already, what'd you say? I can't hear you.
Sorry. I was just saying there's so many things that I think we took for granted before this pandemic that we're realizing, man, that was a very integral part in my, life,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this has been the most I've spent with myself, like, especially during that March and April time when we were like strictly at home, kind of getting out now a little bit, as we can. But I spent a lot of time trying to figure out some things and really, kind of seeing what the value of those things were in my life during that time. So it was good for me. The next question we kind of already talked a little bit about. I know, Brittney, you talked about the importance of finding a good church for your daughter. And so I kind of already know where that is. So let's skip on to about how faith intersects in other areas of your life. So do you find yourself intersecting work and your faith life? What about your family and other friendships? What is the role of faith in those different sectors of your life?
Yeah, I think faith, again, I don't think it's monolithic where it's just one thing for me or, for my family. I think it's something, and I think a prime example of this is when we decided to move to Arkansas. I had received job offers. I had applied for jobs all over the country, and professionally, I just felt like it was time for me to do something else. And you and our friends, so we've had that conversation. Like, man, I need to do something else. And the same, I need to grow more. And we really prayed, and we were like, man, God, put us where you would like for us to be. And the interesting thing is, at the same time I got this job offer, I received another job offer that was really good as well. And both were vice presidents, both were at HBCUs. I'm like, man, I'm a sitting vice president at HBCU, and I wanted to grow and develop under another leader. And now these are two guys, two college presidents who I look up to, who I would really enjoy working for. One was in Florida, one was in Arkansas. So Brittney and I were like, man, do we turn down the beach? How do we make this decision? But we really just prayed, and and I think we had maybe a week, was it a week or so, to decide which one we were going to do. And we started talking to people. Hey, do you know any good churches? Do you know anybody that we can fall under their care? And we really just made a pros and cons list. And we said, hey, we're going to step out on faith, and we think Arkansas is where we need to be. And I don't think we've looked back since. So, yes, faith is important to me professionally, to my family, to my friendships. And I always tell people that the three things that matter to me most are one, my faith, two, my family, and three, my future.
Nice. Awesome. Brittney, you got anything to add to that?
I think that was very well said. For me, my faith shows up everywhere. It shows up daily, even when I'm at work, and my friendships as well. And it's not enough to just say, hey, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. You want to do the work as well. Yeah. I talked to Braque about, us doing things as a family to, help the community, help those around us. I mean, you can't just say, hey, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, I do all of these things when you're not, showing it. So I try to show it, every day in every way, at work and with family as well as friends. So
absolutely, I agree. One of the things that go ahead, Brock.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, one of the things that has kind of come up in my world is the intersections of that, and so it kind of even with my job, I work with high school students now. I was in higher ed, and so even with the high school students, you got to be careful what you say, how you promote certain things. And so I never have to do that. And sometimes that conversation just organically happens. And so for them to see something in me, to ask me about my faith walk, my journey, do I know any churches or things like that in the area, I think is a testament to how you live your life. And as a proclaimed Christian, as someone who, of course, yes, I say that I'm a Christian, but for it to be recognized by someone else without even having to speak it or to self-proclaim, I think is really is what God wants from us. He wants us to walk it. He wants us to talk it and to live it. And so that other, non-believers can see it and want to know more, because I'm never afraid if I'm around people who don't believe in God or talk reckless about the faith or about God not being real. I'm completely fine with that because that's their prerogative to do that. But I hope that the way that I live my life, they can, have that one little inkling that maybe there's something, that is larger than we are, in how I live my life. Braque, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think our faith, I don't want to say has been tested professionally, but with, again, going back to this pandemic with COVID, Brittney is, on the front lines working with folks. And, she's prepared for it because this is what she went to school for. I'm like, Jesus, what are you trying to tell me, Lord?
Oh, in the last days.
I told her, you're going to have to quit working. Then I started looking at our budget and say, I'm going to use my faith in Jesus.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Braque, because, I started working at this facility that I absolutely loved. And I think I started there in March. And, the people were nice. My coworkers were, really nice. I was the only PT there or physical therapist there. So it was kind of like my ship, and so I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, my boss called and she's like, hey, I need you to move to another facility. And then I'm like, oh man, I've gotten comfortable here, and so she calls back and she said, oh yeah, by the way, they're accepting COVID positive patients there. And I'm like, oh wow, like I gotta come up with something because I don't wanna, I don't wanna be exposed to that, I have my family here. I want them to be protected, it was just not appealing for me in the beginning. And, I really had to pray about it. I talked to Braque about it and he wasn't really telling me anything. I was wanting him to be like, oh, baby, just come home. You don't have to work, but like he said, the budget,
I was like, man, did you sign up for this?
Yeah, so it was something that I really had to, pray about. And I started to think, hey, these patients, they're sick. And, I think, therapy is something that would really, really help them, is no different from, us working with a patient with pneumonia. We go through breathing techniques. We go through, movement so that they can feel better, and like he said, this is what I signed up for. This is my profession, and if I have to move, so be it. But honestly, when I prayed about it, that first day, my new coworkers, they were like, man, you're so calm and collected about this whole thing. And I'm like, well, I mean, hey, I've prayed about it and I've asked the Lord to cover me, from the virus. We have all of the appropriate PPE there. So I just went in and said, hey, I'm gonna, be the PT that I signed up to be, and I'm gonna help these patients. And I really see a difference in, for me working with them from the beginning to now. Like, they really have made strides. And I think, physical therapy is really, what they needed just to get moving. And then also, like, I have more hours here. So it's just like a win-win for me. And like I told Braque, and I think he talks about this all the time. Like, you see, when you're presented with something, it seems like a bad situation in the beginning, but God always has a way of, turning it around and making it positive. So I love this new facility.
It's closer to the house. She's like
5 minutes away.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a win-win situation.
Awesome. That sounds good. One thing that I've learned just from these few minutes of talking with you guys is in terms of your marriage, the level of communication that the two of you have, and the consulting with God through the process. Every situation that y'all have talked about, you prayed about it, you asked for guidance from God, you talked to each other about it. There was a lot of just communication. And I think that's going to be key in terms of, marriage and to other people who are thinking about marriage and things like that. It seems that like the amount of communication is key to the success of your marriage. So good. I'm learning. Let me take me some notes, put it on my list. All right. So we are winding down. So I got two more questions for you. And this is kind of lighthearted. Do you guys have any go-to scriptures? Maybe some scriptures that live right here in your heart. You can quote it. When you have in situations, you can pull it out, write it down, whatever you got to do. But what's in your scriptural toolbox?
You want to go? Well, so for me, my go-to scripture, it comes from James 1, 2nd chapter, and it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." So that's one of my favorite scriptures, just because whenever I'm faced with anything, whether it be big or small, like I know that I'll get through it. I know I'll get through it, and I know that there will be just a lesson in, in any situation. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, mine is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And those who know me know that I'm always talking about my career, what I'm trying to do next. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this.
Hey, flex on us one time. Come on.
Well, the interesting thing, Brittney and I, we've had discussions, and she'll say, all you worry about is your career.
Imagine that. Yep.
But I think with that has also brought out a sense of unfamiliarity in many situations, or in this most present situation. When I worked at Alabama A&M University, I was working for my mentor and someone who I was comfortable with, someone who I knew would have my back when things may not have gone right. When I went to Russ, I was working there for my mentor, who was the president. I knew he would have my back. But coming here, I didn't know anybody. And not only, again, it's easy when it's just you, but now you got two other people who are dependent on you. Brittney had a house. She was doing well. She was administrator of a facility there. And it was familiar for us. We had a church home. We were doing the doggone thing. We felt like, and it was I had to really lean on that scripture, Jeremiah 29:11, and say, hey, God, I trust you. I believe that you will allow us to make the right decision, and it won't go here. And I won't go here and my new my new boss, my new president, we call him chancellors here. My new chancellor and I won't not get along, or we will get along. I will get along with my colleagues. It will be a good situation. I'll be happy. It's somewhere we can sit down for the next 5-6 years and really enjoy. And God has done that, and He's manifested in our lives in a phenomenal way. I think we've grown a lot here. I think there are still areas for growth for us individually and collectively. But I also think that God has just allowed us to see His will be done here in in many aspects of our life.
Awesome. That's great. Look at y'all scriptures. That's good. I like both of those. Brittney, that scripture that you read, we just did that one last Sunday for our children's church. So we talked about joy and how joy is a choice because we have every choice to be upset about certain circumstances. You could have came out your bag when they told you had to go somewhere else. But, the fact that you were able to sit and talk through it, consult with God, you found joy in that situation. So that's great. It's always good to have those scriptures, ready to go for any situation. You have to kind of talk scriptures into situations to make them better. And I believe truly in that. So my final question of the hour. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, me? I got a lot. So my grandmother, she would always, my mom told me, she talked about Psalms 23, and so Psalms 23, man, it's one of those that I grew up on, and it's not until like now that I really understand it. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want, and that the first scripture alone has gotten me through a lot of things. When I feel inadequate in certain areas, God has already promised me that I would not go without. And so that's always one that I come back to frequently when I'm feeling down or feeling without. So Psalms 23 is probably my absolute favorite. Okay, so final question of the hour. What advice would you give fellow millennial married couples? Just in general, it can be about whatever, but what is the best advice you can give them?
Well, I know this is going to sound like really cliche, but communication is key.
Absolutely.
For me, that's like the number one thing. And I think with Braque and I, our communication styles are a little bit different. For me, if something is out of order or if something is bothering me, I want to talk about it right then and there. And I may be emotional about it, but I'm ready to get it out, but with Braque, he's more so of a, hey, let's table this, until we're both in a space where we can, talk about it. So that's something that we've had to kind of meet in the middle on. But, all in all, you gotta have that communication. You gotta talk things out. If something is not sitting well, you just gotta talk it out and communicate. And I think, if you have that, then everything will just kind of fall into place.
Yeah, I think that men are internal people. I think that's why you have a man cave, because men, something can happen, and a man will bring it up 4 days later. He won't say nothing about it when it happens. He'll bring it up 4 days later. Say, you remember when you said, and this really upset me, but because men are processors, and I think a lot of times, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong, but I think a lot of times when a situation happens, if we're not careful, we will and talk about it, and I don't just mean us. I mean people in general. If we're not careful and talk about it when it happens, that sometimes you're yelling at me to get your point across, or cuss words are coming out to get your. I ain't talking about you, baby. I'm talking about in general to get your point across. So now the situation that was small is now amplified because I'm mad that you were yelling at me. Excuse me, excuse me. But I think that there's value in the other side of it as well, because why are we prolonging something that we can go ahead and squash? Right. In 4 days we could be back on our good foot by then, but now we got to walk around looking sour mouthed the whole 4 days. Right. But that's not the answer to the question for me.
Okay, you need to get that out.
Okay, let me go ahead and do that. Here, Brittney said that she thinks it's communication. For me, it's communication. But I want to take the other side of it. It's the lack of communication with folks outside of your marriage. You know what I'm saying? Keep folks out your business.
That's a good one.
Preach.
And things will come. People will tell you, whatever. And I think you should always be able to come back to your spouse and talk about it. Whether that's with your job, whether it's personally, whether that's rumors, all of those things. Because at the end of the day, it's not. My wife and I are trying to build a dynasty. And part of that dynasty is going to be ups and downs.
Right.
But we got to be able to come back to the comfort table and say, okay, how do we get past this? So I think that means your family, your parents, everybody. I can't say, well, hey, mom or dad, this happened in my marriage, because then, whereas Brittney and I, we've gotten past it.
They still mad.
Oh, they're still mad. I can't believe Brittney did that to my baby. So you got to have God or somebody, but it got to be between the three of you to discuss this thing. And there are things that have happened in our marriage that, you know, nothing bad, but we can sit back and laugh at and say, man, ain't that crazy? You know, and I think life is like that. Things that in life that you thought would have taken you out,
Yeah.
God empowered you, and you're able to go and grow through those things. Then you sit back and laugh at them and makes you stronger when the next battle comes. You say, man, I thought this was going to take me out, but God allowed me to get through this. And now when this next mountain comes, because it's inevitable that it's going to come, now I know that I have the wind beneath my wings, or I have the strength to power through this thing to get through it. So it's building that momentum, get to the next level.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Woo, this has been good. This has been real good. And I'm so appreciative. I'm so thankful that you guys agreed to do this with me. I think the information that you've shared, the conversation that we've had today, will help somebody. And that's the whole point of it. You know, as I think about it, and Braque, you just said something that reminded me of something that I do. I journal a lot, you know, things that I'm going through. I journal. I have a prayer journal, really is what it is. And it's just my conversations with God, whether, you know, if something is going on or whenever I just think about it. It's not a daily thing that I do. Sometimes it is, depending on the week and what's happening. And I find comfort, though, because I have them everywhere. And I'll go back and pull one, and I'm reading something that I was going through during that moment. I'm like, this was this little, like now it's this little, it literally means nothing to me now.
Right.
But that's a testament of who God is. I told God about that thing, and he worked it out. Whatever the solution was, he worked it out. And I think that's what brings me closer and closer to God, that no matter what it is, because you're right, bad things and, you know, like that are going to happen. It's coming, you know, whenever our day is, our season is, it's coming, but it's how you react in those moments. And this, to me, is your practice. This is, you know, you praise God through it all. This is the practice time. But when game time comes, you experience something unexpected. That's when you really got to showcase your faith in who God is, and what you've been been preaching about and writing about is for those moments. So yes. So anyway, so thank y'all again for sitting down with me today. I know you guys are both busy, as am I, but it's always good to make time for these types of conversations, especially for our peers and people just like us. So thank y'all.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So that's it. September 20 something. I told y'all. 23rd. So by the time people are listening to this, it'll be that day or past that day. So anyway, all right, y'all be easy. Have a great Labor Day. Take care.
Thank you, man.
All right, bye, y'all.